Lucas was a man known for living a life full of romantic adventures before he met Rachel. He had a reputation for being unable to commit to a single relationship. His relationships were always short-lived, built on excitement and fun, with no real attachment. He lived a life full of thrills and freedom, chasing love for pleasure without thinking about the consequences or real emotions. But everything changed when he met Rachel, the woman who turned his life upside down. There was something about her personality that drew him in, something different from all the other women he had known. With her, he felt something he had never felt before, stability and security, as though his heart had finally found its place after years of wandering in a sea of fleeting relationships. As time passed, Lucas realized he couldn't live without her. He began to see Rachel not only as a lover, but as a life partner. So, when he asked her to marry him, his decision was final, with a clear promise that she would be the only woman in his life. He made a solemn vow to leave behind the life he had led in the past, to build with Rachel a life full of love, peace, and stability. He believed their marriage would mark the beginning of a new chapter, free from the emotional chaos that had characterized his previous relationships. But what Lucas didn't know was that promises don't always guarantee longevity, and the times that hearts were being built together could easily turn into a difficult test if not treated with care and attention. At the beginning, Lucas and Rachel's marriage seemed like a perfect love story. Happiness filled their home, and Lucas made a great effort to show Rachel how much he loved and cared for her. There seemed to be nothing that could disturb the harmony of their married life as they lived their early days together like a beautiful dream. Lucas showered Rachel with affection, always surprising her with gifts and romantic gestures that made her feel like the most special woman in the world. During that time, Rachel believed she had finally found the security and happiness she had always dreamed of. However, like many promises, Lucas failed to keep his word. Gradually, his old habits began to creep back into his life. At first, his behavior seemed ordinary and harmless. Long work meetings, extended phone calls, and frequent absences from home under the pretext of professional obligations. Over time, these absences became more frequent, turning the evenings they once spent together into long hours of waiting for Rachel. She would sit alone on the living room couch, staring into the void, wondering when Lucas would come home. While Lucas spent countless hours outside, moving from one relationship to another, he failed to realize that his actions were pushing Rachel back into the solitude she thought she had escaped by marrying him. It wasn't just his physical absence that hurt her, but the growing feeling that the man she loved and trusted was drifting away emotionally and mentally. Rachel felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness consuming her from within, especially as she began to notice Lucas's growing coldness toward her. He was no longer the man she had known at the start of their marriage. His gaze had lost its warmth, his words had become dull, and his touch was rare and devoid of affection. Days that once held great meaning for her, like her birthday or their wedding anniversary, now passed unnoticed, with Lucas making no effort to celebrate or even acknowledge them. Desperate to revive their relationship, Rachel tried everything she could. She reminded Lucas of the beautiful memories they had shared, speaking to him openly about her feelings, her pain, and her loneliness. She hoped he would listen, that he would reach out and pull them both out of the emotional chasm growing between them. But he remained oblivious to her silent cries for help. As the days went by, Rachel felt trapped between her sense of betrayal and her desperate need for love and support. A close friend suggested she seek external help, perhaps a therapist who could guide her through her turmoil and help her cope. Though hesitant at first, Rachel decided to give it a try. That decision led her to Dr. Hayden's office, a well-regarded therapist known for his compassionate nature and professional approach. From the very first session, Rachel felt like she had found a safe space. Dr. Hayden was an attentive listener, someone who made her feel like every word she said mattered. His calm and kind demeanor provided her with a sense of comfort she hadn't experienced in years. As their sessions continued, Rachel's feelings began to shift. Dr. Hayden was no longer just a therapist to her. She started to feel drawn to him in ways she hadn't expected. Each conversation with him felt like a lifeline, a glimmer of hope in her otherwise bleak world. But her growing feelings soon collided with reality when she attempted to express them. Dr. Hayden, maintaining his professionalism, met her confession with firm rejection. In a calm but resolute tone, he said, "I love my wife, and I could never betray her. That's something I cannot allow myself to do." Rachel left his office shattered, her heart heavy with another layer of pain. This time, the hurt wasn't just from being rejected, but from the realization that she had begun seeking solace in the wrong places. She understood too late that the support she desperately needed should have come from her relationship with her husband, a relationship that had slipped through her fingers despite her attempts to save it. In that moment of profound heartbreak and despair, Rachel crossed paths with a man named John. He entered her life like a gentle breeze on a stiflingly hot day, bringing with him a sense of relief and hope. John was unlike anyone she had ever known, charming, warm, and genuinely attentive. His infectious laughter and the way he spoke to her made Rachel feel as though she was the center of the universe. For the first time in what felt like forever, she began to feel seen, cherished, and valued. It didn't take long for an emotional bond to form between them. John made it his mission to show Rachel that she deserved to be loved and cared for.
If you like charming stories that touch the heart and inspire the mind, be sure to press the subscribe button and activate the bell to receive more wonderful tales.
He listened to her stories with undivided attention, empathized with her pain, and offered her a sense of security that had been absent from her marriage. Every moment they spent together was a stark reminder of what she had always wished for with Lucas, but never received. With John, Rachel felt as though she had found a sanctuary, a place where she could finally breathe freely without the fear of judgment or neglect. However, the changes in Rachel did not escape Lucas's notice. The woman who had once cared for every detail of his life, who would ask about his day and ensure his comfort, now seemed like a distant stranger. She no longer showed interest in him, nor did she try to engage him in conversation or seek his attention as she used to. Rachel appeared to be living in a world of her own, lost in thoughts that Lucas was not privy to. A strange and unfamiliar feeling began to stir within Lucas, a mix of suspicion and unease. He started to suspect that something was amiss, that Rachel might have found someone else to fill the void he had created. Yet, without concrete evidence to confirm his fears, Lucas kept his suspicions to himself, allowing doubt and jealousy to silently eat away at him. On New Year's Eve, Lucas sat across from Rachel at the dinner table, his voice devoid of any warmth as he informed her that he would be traveling for a few days on a business trip. Rachel feigned interest, though deep down she knew that his presence or absence no longer mattered to her. All she felt was an overwhelming void, as if their marriage was nothing more than a fragile facade, hiding a world of disappointments beneath it. What Rachel didn't know was that Lucas was lying. There was no business trip. Instead, he had carefully crafted a plan. Consumed by suspicion and blinded by jealousy, he wanted to uncover the truth that had been haunting him. Was there someone else in Rachel's life? And what better night to confirm his suspicions than New Year's Eve, when social engagements were at their peak? Lucas waited until he was certain that Rachel no longer expected him to return. Then, with his heart pounding like a war drum, he drove back to the house. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, fear, and a faint hope that he was wrong. Parking his car outside, he entered the house quietly, making sure not to make a sound that might give him away. As he approached the bedroom, faint sounds reached his ears, soft murmurs and muffled laughter, sounds that hadn't graced his home in years. Slowly, he pushed the door open, and what he saw froze him in his tracks. There, in the dim light, Rachel was in John's arms, sharing a level of intimacy that Lucas hadn't seen in their marriage for what felt like a lifetime. That sight ignited an uncontrollable rage within him. Unable to restrain himself, Lucas charged at Rachel like a storm, his voice booming with furious accusations. John, caught off guard, scrambled to escape, bolting out of the house and leaving Rachel to face Lucas's wrath alone. His anger erupted like a volcano, and he began striking her with unbridled force, each blow fueled by the pent-up frustration and betrayal he felt. Rachel screamed, trying to shield herself, but she was no match for Lucas's fury. Eventually, her strength gave out, and she collapsed onto the floor, unconscious. It was only then that Lucas realized he had crossed an unforgivable line. Panicked, he called for an ambulance, and Rachel was rushed to the hospital, her body battered and her spirit shattered. After the incident that left scars on Rachel's body and soul, she knew she could no longer endure this life. Sitting across from Lucas in the living room, a space once filled with joyful memories, but now tainted by pain and betrayal, she spoke in a trembling voice, her eyes brimming with tears. "I can't do this anymore, Lucas. I want a divorce." Lucas stared at her, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief, as if her words had struck him like an unexpected blow. "Rachel, please don't do this. I know I've made mistakes, but I'll fix everything. Just give me one more chance. I promise I'll change." His voice was desperate, filled with a pleading sincerity, but it was far too late. Rachel met his gaze, her eyes a blend of sorrow and newfound strength. "I've given you countless chances, Lucas, and every time you chose to hurt me. I need a real life, one filled with love and respect, and I no longer see that with you." Lucas clasped his hands together, a last-ditch effort to appeal to her compassion, but her decision was final. Rachel gathered the remnants of her belongings, leaving behind the memories of pain and disappointment. Despite the heaviness in her heart, she stepped out of their shared life, determined to rebuild her own. She emerged from the relationship exhausted, yet stronger than ever before. As for Lucas, he remained in the house that once pulsed with happiness and warmth. Now, it was silent, a haunting reminder of what he had lost. Days turned into weeks, each one heavier than the last, as he replayed his actions and realized, too late, that he had loved Rachel far more deeply than he had ever admitted to himself. But by then, his realization was futile. His life had become a hollow shell, an echo of what it had been when Rachel was by his side. While Rachel was carving out a new path for herself, rebuilding her life from the ashes of a shattered marriage, Lucas found himself drowning in a sea of regret and sorrow. The long, lonely nights taught him a lesson he wished he had learned sooner. Love cannot endure neglect, and betrayal offers no second chances. Lucas never imagined his life could spiral so completely out of control. The days dragged by, each hour weighed down with memories and moments where he knew he could have chosen differently. The home he once shared with Rachel now felt like an empty shell, its walls echoing with her laughter, her touch, and the love that had once filled it to the brim. The windows of the house were closed, but the echoes of their last fight still seemed to linger in the air. Lucas often sat in the living room, the space that had once been warm and alive, staring at the photos of them together. He wondered how he could have let someone like Rachel slip through his fingers. Friends who tried to cheer him up were met with a wall of silence. Lucas had become a man haunted by his past, endlessly replaying every word, every decision, every mistake. At night, he sat alone, clutching a glass of whiskey, hoping to numb the pain that had taken up permanent residence in his heart. With each passing day, the truth became clearer and sharper. Love requires constant care, attention, and appreciation. Betrayal wasn't just a fleeting error. It was a dagger that pierced the heart of love, leaving it beyond repair. He realized now, with a pain that cut deep, that Rachel had not just been his wife. She had been the beating heart of his life, and losing her meant losing a part of himself that he could never get back.